Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I see some more people trickling in. I know some of you have probably been to a Women in Cloud event before, and for some of you, might be your first time ever hearing of Women in Cloud. So we're very excited to have you with us today. This is part of our Women in Cloud Cloud Jobs webinar series, where we focus on providing insight and skill building for all of you and helping you kind of make your career in tech. And we're super excited for today. We have Resilience in Tech with Crystal Guthrie, who we will meet later. But before we jump into that, I want to hear from all of you. So if you're on LinkedIn, you may have seen this. This is a little bit of a duplicate, but we want to know how you describe your career when you introduce yourself in a professional setting. You can drop the letter in the chat for what you think applies to you most. So A, timeline chronological. Do you give people like an order of what your jobs have been? B, collection of roles and functions. You kind of group things maybe. C, do you just explain what your current job or the current project that you're working on is to people? Or D, do you explain your professional introduction in another way? Let us know in the chat. Drop a letter for us. I see a mix of A and B there. Okay. And then I see a lot of C's, kind of what we're currently working on. I think that's really common to do. I know for me, for a long time, I was timeline chronological, where I would just go from the beginning to where I am now. And that can be cumbersome and kind of get convoluted. So we'll kind of get into this a little bit later, but I love seeing everyone's different experiences with this. That's great. And now, you all, I'm going to do a little self-promotion for Women in Cloud. If you haven't heard, our Women in Cloud skilling scholarships are back, and this is perfect for what we're talking about today about resilience in tech and really building yourself up to be the best option and the best you for your career. And so we have these 5 specializations that you can see on the screen. These are our fundamentals courses that are available through our scholarship. And really exciting this year, we've expanded, and we also have a group of advanced courses as well. So depending on where you're at in your career, we have all of these options, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, like I said, but I always have to promote these because it's literally free for you all, and we want to help get you all the skills that you need to either get a new career in tech or to promote in your current career. We're here for you. And so this is a perfect example of that. And I'm so excited today to introduce Crystal Guthrie. She spearheads digital and sustainability transformation initiatives, leveraging cloud technology solutions and strategic partnerships. Her extensive background spans both the technology and financial service sectors, encompassing groundbreaking innovations and high-impact projects. She possesses a proven leadership track record in multinational corporations and venture-backed startups, orchestrating multifaceted teams across diverse business and technical domains while successfully scaling novel solutions and optimizing business models. Basically, Crystal is amazing, and we're here to hear from her and learn about her expertise and her industry experience and just all of the leadership that she can provide us. So, Crystal, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thanks, Marissa. Really appreciate it. And hello, welcome to Women in Cloud. So glad that you're here with us today to talk about resilience in tech. I see some familiar faces, which is very exciting. And I'm looking forward to our discussion. It's definitely a good break from the workday for those of you that were able to take the time out and sneak away from your normal schedules. So picture this. It's the fall of 2008. And I'm living in Boulder, Colorado. It's gorgeous, isn't it? Working for a venture-funded firm that focuses on data aggregation and cutting-edge visualizations for financial markets. Hosting applications in the private cloud. So before the cloud became cool, I was already there. I loved my job. It was super interesting because I was managing over 10 accounts and leading a small team of PMs that were focused on a constant stream of innovation and problem solving, such as upgrading fundamentals data in the Fidelity Stock Screener, or working with CNBC to relaunch their $1 million portfolio contest after it had been hacked. Then, as you'll remember, Lehman Brothers collapsed in September of 2008, which marked the beginning of a massive financial crisis, now known as the subprime crisis. Like tens of thousands of people in the financial industry that fall, I'm laid off. This was my second layoff, so I knew that the opportunities would be scarce for at least a year. In the financial industry, layoffs are less about changing the business model oftentimes and more about just ebbs and flows of the financial markets. So I thought to myself, I didn't like the instability. That was my emotional reaction. And I didn't want the downtime, but it couldn't be changed in the short term. So how many of you have been there? Raise a hand or a thumb in our Zoom. Let us see. We want some participation today. This is definitely a two-way conversation. So you may have been laid off due to a reorg. Mindy says, I have. Yep, hear ya. Or an acquisition. You suddenly have no job and what feels like no options. Or your current job is a dead end. Well, I'm here to tell you, you're not alone. Adversity is not something we can avoid. We all experience it at some point in our lives. What we do have control over is how we react to adversity and protect ourselves from its impact. And that's what I'm here to talk with you about today. I'm here for you, and I'm going to tell you the 3 key things that you can do to be valued, engaged, and successful in your tech job. In other words, to be resilient. So when I say resilience, what comes to mind for you? How would you describe it? Put your thoughts in the chat. Resilience is chin up, bouncing back, keep going. Ability to get knocked down, focusing on the positive. That's great. So if we look to the experts, the American Psychological Association defines resilience as the process and the outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or changing life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility and adjustment to external and internal demands. So that's a lot of words, but I'm hearing process, adapting, and flexibility. I'm passionate about resilience in tech. So if we think about our definition of resilience and we lay it on top of how technology has emerged and merged, frankly, with our lives, the 4 industrial revolutions are a way to consider that. Technology has changed the world. Advances in technology have allowed us to stay safely connected with loved ones during a pandemic, take a few months or years to travel abroad and work remotely, or to find that perfect restaurant on the fly based on reviews and your food preferences. We are now at the start of a new wave of technology, artificial intelligence. This wave will be so powerful that it's considered part of the 4th industrial revolution, and it will impact all of our lives. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd like for a technology that impacted all of our lives to be built and governed by a diverse group of people, especially women. So we've got some work to do. Let's explore why resilience in tech is necessary for your success and how to achieve it. The tech industry is not an easy place to be a woman. However, it can be rewarding. I'm sure you've heard the stories about being the only woman in a room. I've lived it, including while wearing hot pink jeans. Did you know that the tech layoffs in 2022 have been devastating? Some of us here on the call may have been impacted, but it's especially devastating given the research by the Women Tech Network showing that 69% of those laid off are women. And women only make up 25% of the technology workforce today. So we were disproportionately impacted. That's not a good trend for anybody. We need diversity and perspective of women's voices. Look into the future. According to the World Economic Forum, women account for less than 25% of all AI specialists and only 14% of cloud computing workforce, 20% of engineers. The AI research staff at Facebook is only 15% women. And at Google, the figure is even lower at approximately 10%. This is the future of tech and why resilience is so important. We need more women to be involved in what technologies are being developed and how they're deployed and what impact they have. So going back to my personal story, in 2008, when I was laid off from the financial technology firm that I worked at, I decided it was an opportunity for me to hit the reset button and more closely align my life and work with my goals. I miss living in Seattle, so I moved back to the foggy Pacific Northwest. I like tech work, but lost interest in the financial industry due to the instability. So I decided to seek a role at Microsoft. But it didn't happen overnight. I was career switching into a different industry, and my stellar resume didn't resonate. Oh, and I also had no network to refer me into Microsoft. Imagine walking around in a maze. I'd hit a wall. I figured that I needed to get some inside walls of Microsoft and meet people, and then things would happen. So I put aside my ego, my normal compensation and title, etc., and took a contract role doing business intelligence for the Microsoft hardware product team. This led to a full-time role as a senior product manager on the then secret Surface team. So here's my resilience formula that I want to share with you today. 1, maintaining flexibility. 2, cultivating a growth mindset. And 3, connecting the dots. Maintaining flexibility. Visualize bamboo. It's a material that's both flexible and strong. Check out this interior from Dwell magazine. It's pretty cool, huh? Bamboo stairs, bamboo structure, bamboo furniture, and it's all sustainable, which is an extra bonus. How do you maintain your flexibility? Think about that. Some things that you can do. Think about what you want, but be open to how you'll get it. Those two things are not the same. Sometimes we get caught up in the how and we lose sight of the bigger picture, that the what can be accessed different ways. And remember, you have transferable skills. Focus on your strengths and reframe your narrative on who you are and what value you'll bring. Everybody has weaknesses, but how you frame that and the strengths that you bring day one is what's going to get you that next role that ultimately meets your goals. 2, cultivate a growth mindset. So this gets into the area where you feel you're weak or maybe a beginner. Approach unfamiliar territory with a beginner mindset and be confident that you'll improve by asking questions, finding mentors, obtaining micro-credentials. The one constant in technology is that it's always changing. That's why we love this work. The product or program you worked on 5 years ago may now be obsolete. So keep learning. 3, view your career not as a straight line, but rather a connect the dots picture. For me, that picture represents all things data and has led me in multiple directions. How can you apply this concept in your own career? For instance, you can analyze various ways to work with a company. Directly as an employee, through a contract firm as a project-based employee, through a professional services firm where you work on multiple projects with multiple teams, or perhaps as a partner to that company. You can also cultivate skills and experience outside of your day job through professional organizations like Women in Cloud or through volunteer efforts. So, how's my journey going? I've now worked in and around Microsoft for 12 years in a number of ways and have thoroughly enjoyed it. I also now have the flexibility to work from San Diego and have been for several years, even before COVID. Given all of the technology that we have available these days to work remotely and the collaboration tools that we have to help keep the team cohesive and moving forward and doing great things. Even better, I find ways to meet and learn from new people and to make space in meetings and initiatives for diverse views to be heard and explored. This is the purpose that drives me, ensuring that in the future, I'm not the only woman in the room. Before I close, I wanted to encourage you to identify your purpose for working in technology. So get out a piece of paper, a sticky note, jot something down right now. Sometimes we hear this and we'll think, well, we'll do it later, and it doesn't happen. Do it right now. I'll give you a minute to get your pen. It could be a specific emerging tech that excites you, as virtual reality or space exploration, for instance. Or perhaps it's more about career advancement and innovation. Or maybe what you really enjoy is solving challenges for customers. So what is that purpose? Whatever it is, write it down right now. Stick it on your desk. This can change over time as you learn more and have new experiences. Adversity will come. And when it does, I want you to look back at that note on your desk to remind yourself why you're here, what you're doing this for, and how you're going to be resilient. So let's go over our resilience formula one more time. Maintain flexibility, cultivate a growth mindset, and connect the dots. When you add 1, 2, and 3 together, you get success. Remind yourself you are resilient and you've got this. We're eager to discuss your questions, and I'm going to turn it back to Marissa.
Thank you so much for walking us through that, Crystal. It's always a pleasure to hear someone who's actually been through the process. And I know we've had some comments dropped in some comments and some questions already dropped in the chat, so we'll get to those. And before we transition into full discussion, I'm really excited to hear what you all wrote for your purpose statement, even if it's just a draft. I would love for you guys to drop that in the chat. I know for me, it's something I'm still working on. And I always say that my purpose and my goal, my dream, it's something around sustainably creating access and making a difference to help people, whether that be currently in tech or whatever industry that is. I think every industry can do that. So I would love to see your purpose statements in the chat as well, even if you're working on them or it might change tomorrow, who knows. I think it's really important, as Crystal said, to write those down and have that visual reminder of what your goal is, because it's really easy to get lost when we're going through all the job applications and looking for what career options the best. It can be really overwhelming. So having that set goal is a great thing to have. Crystal, thank you again. And I think a great place to start would be, we had a lot of interest in the conversation around networking into tech. And we had someone drop a comment, Ivy, thank you. They said, I'm a beginner in the cloud environment, and I'm trying to at least get an internship. I'm transitioning from software development to cloud DevOps. I would love to network with individuals who will guide me into this path, especially landing a job. Women in Cloud, we do have networking resources, but Crystal, I think it would be great to hear from you about kind of how you even broke into that field and into that networking space to where you could start building those relationships.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks for your question, Ivy. We actually have a lot of tools available to us today via LinkedIn that weren't available when I was doing my career switch into technology when I entered Microsoft. So in addition to the strategies around getting inside the walls of an organization that I mentioned, you can join on LinkedIn. There are different groups or forums that are focused on specific types of jobs. So for instance, I'm a member of a product manager network on LinkedIn. So even though I haven't been an active product manager in recent years, it's part of my core skill set. And it's something that I always think back to and try to find best practices from people who are working in the space, and it's a way to meet new people. In addition to that, something that I do regularly to either reconnect with past colleagues or meet new people that I get introduced to through my network or that comment on my posts, etc., is to invite them to virtual coffee. So it takes the burden off of taking time out of your schedule to drive downtown and meet in person, if, for instance, you're in the Seattle area. But virtual coffee represents, 25 minutes of your time with someone during the course of the day to just have a free form chat about what they're interested in, what they're focused on, things that they're trying to do in their career, and how you can mutually benefit each other. One of my mentors shared a long time ago, he's from the financial industry, that relationships are like it's like a bank. You put money into the bank, and then at some point you may take money out of the bank, or you may not. But having that value exchange in a virtual coffee is a way to demonstrate that you can benefit someone, and then they may benefit you in time. You may have an ask of them, such as an introduction for a really cool job that you want to apply for in their organization.
That's great. I think you broke it down in such a simple way, because LinkedIn groups and different, just like online groups like that, are becoming more and more accessible to people. And the idea of just like a little virtual coffee meetup it takes some of the pressure of in-person events off. And if you want to meet with someone that might be potentially across the world or maybe just across your town, I think it makes it really accessible for you to just build that audience like you're talking about. And especially with all of the resources we have now, I know a lot of you are probably sitting in front of your computer with your phone near you, or you might be on your phone. So it's a great reminder. Before I ask the next question, I want to read a couple purpose statements we had dropped in the chat, just because I think they're so fantastic. So we had one from Mary. They said for more Black girls to be builders and creators, to create software that helps disabled people be included and gain self-independence. That is absolutely amazing. And right after that, we had Tiff Smith. For me, it's for the love of tech, encouraging to other women coming after me and to be an excellent mentor to women looking to get into this field or women who are already in tech. Things like that, those are great foundations and kind of anchors for your career. And that way you kind of have guidance for what you want to do. And I saw a comment earlier, Debbie mentioned that she was a part of the mass layoffs that happened at tech at one point, because I know it comes in waves. And she made a comment and said she realized that that wasn't the job for her. And she found a better opportunity and one that aligned with her goals more. And so it's always a good reminder that there is opportunities out there and that you don't have to give up necessarily your purpose or in these like dreams or ideas for your career, that you can find symbiotic relationships between them. And I think with that, another big thing we saw coming from the chat, can you talk more about being contracted and being a consultant and what that's like and how that's helped your tech career as a way versus just like going straight into like a 9-to-5 employment and kind of the flexibility that comes with consulting?
Yeah, for sure. When you go into consulting or a specific role that's a contract, it's an opportunity to make a shift without necessarily going through the interview loops that are legendary in the tech industry. We've all heard about them, how people maybe have to go through 10 interviews before they finally get an offer for a role. And in terms of joining a firm as a contract employee, where let's say it's agency X, and they do a lot of business with Amazon and Microsoft. There are roles that come up for somebody may be out for parental leave or something like that, where they need a person to come in that's experienced and can hit the ground running for a 6-month time period on a specific contract, focused on a specific role. That's a way to go in to a different organization and get your feet wet, where maybe in your company that you're currently at, your personal brand is not viewed, for instance, to be, let's say, somebody that's leading a customer service team. However, your role does touch customer service, and to the extent that you've been able to demonstrate and develop skills over time, and you want to really transition into that. Those contract roles are a great way to go in and demonstrate those skills. Some firms actually do what's called try and buy, which can happen a lot of times with software developers, for instance, or people that are doing, say they're in a security function across the app development team. Try and buys are where they open up a contract role to bring you in to get a feel, because understanding your fit and how you operate once you're in role is a lot more accurate than a bunch of interviews. So the try and buy is a very popular strategy for companies, and making yourself available for those types of roles can lead to lots of great stuff. So those are examples of how contract roles can work for you to actually navigate in a different way in your career.
That's great to hear. I feel like it's mentioned briefly, and we always talk about careers, but we don't really talk about the ways that you can build your career in tech. I think that's a fantastic way. And if I don't know how many of you are coming from another field, drop a 1 in the chat if you might be coming from a different industry that's not tech. I think we often don't hear about consulting in the same way in other fields. So it's awesome to kind of know that that's a path for people. And I think with some of the tips that you gave about like try and buy and ways to kind of get started in that, could you share some common challenges that tech professionals face in contract work and ways that people or even you yourself kind of overcome these challenges and, for lack of a better word, stay resilient in their role and in their goals?
Yes. So the positive of contract roles is you have some flexibility, right? So you get to go and experience a new organization and demonstrate your skills and meet people. What can feel negative about contract roles is that you may not have much management. And I've seen situations where somebody is put into a role and then they really don't have a lot of guidance. It doesn't occur to their sponsor or their manager to check in with them regularly. And they also may not be viewed as a go-to by the team that they're in, because the team, some of them may not even realize that the person is there and enroll. Communication is, varies among teams and organizations and can be challenging. So what I recommend if you are going to take the contract route is that you exercise the ability to go from what can be a chaotic or an unstructured situation into one where you put some structure on it so that you could be successful. It's really important in situations where you are joining a team, or even if you work as somebody that does sales or business development, defining success, defining what your goal is when you start the relationship. So if you go into a contract role, do things such as provide a weekly status in writing to your contract manager, just brief, focusing on wins that you had that week, what's upcoming for the next week, risk and opportunities, so that there is an ongoing status when they're available to check it and they feel like they have a good understanding of what you're doing and where you're focused. In addition to that, if your contract manager has time for you, and this is at the company where you're working, not the firm that you're contracting through, make sure that you have a regular sync or one-on-one session with them. Depending on the pace, depending on the level that you're at, it might be a weekly half hour. It could be every other week for a half hour. But be sure, as good hygiene, to always have that check-in time with your manager and use it wisely. So if you're asking someone for their time, make sure that you're running the schedule and using it wisely. So you come to the table with 2 or 3 topics that you want to discuss to get guidance on, face to face. And also when you open the call, you let them know, hey, here's my bullets for today. What did you have that you wanted to share with me? And open the floor and give them the opportunity to either talk through your 3 or 4 points, or let you know about some things that maybe you hadn't heard of before you move on to the agenda you prepared. It doesn't have to be formal. It can be very brief, one-word bullets, but the point is come into it with a point of view and a structure so that you can get what you need out of those check-ins. If you put these structures in place, it'll help you a lot.
I love that. I put it in the chat, but when you said define what the goal is when you start the relationship, I think that's so important. And I know for me, as someone that's my career is relatively new compared to others, it's very easy to think that you can't talk to like management or other people in certain ways, but like having those clear boundaries and like you said, defining what the goal is so important to success in your role. So that way you understand what you're there to do and they understand what the boundaries of your role are. And we did get a question from Ivy. It's a little bit more specific, so we can kind of broaden it a bit as well. Ivy is talking about that they are from Kenya and they're having difficulties finding remote jobs or internships abroad because there's different work permits required in specific countries. What is the best approach for this? I was wondering if you could speak to, if you have any insight on this specifically, that's fantastic. And more broadly, if you could speak to kind of the best way to look for contract work or consulting. I know it's been mentioned before that people can pick up small gigs on websites like Fiverr, but when you're looking for a larger portfolio, where do you go from there versus just like one-off projects?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't have a ton of experience in this area, but I can tell you what I've seen recently. So at Microsoft, for instance, on their careers page, they recently, I think it was within the last 3 weeks, listed a bunch of what they framed as internships that were to specific groups or areas. So those could be something like, it wasn't Women in Cloud, but let's say hypothetically, Women in Cloud was one of them. Or down here in San Diego, there's an organization called Latina Geeks. Those types of organizations are ways to get in touch with companies that are in the space that you want to work in. And sometimes they open up internships for people that recently graduated or are switching careers, so that it's a defined period of time. It may not be, again, the full compensation that you're used to, but it's enough for you to get by so that you can go and get experience and, meet people within an organization. So that's where I would start. I would also utilize Women in Cloud as a resource. I know the Chitran team have a lot of experience working with organizations that are not based in the US, and therefore there might be some more avenues that I'm not aware of personally where you can get some opportunities going, even though you're in Kenya.
Thank you for that. That was really helpful. And for everyone, I am part of the Women in Cloud team. I realized I never actually introduced myself. So I'm going to drop my email in the chat, and you can always reach out to me. And even if I don't have the answer, I can try to connect you to the best resources as well. And Crystal, I'm actually going to take your advice when you were talking to Ivy's question. I think to Ivy, that's a fantastic time to work on those networks and work on your networking skills and reach out to LinkedIn groups. And even like Facebook has a lot of different tech and career groups. So find some of those groups, whether it's in your area or international, and reach out to people there too. Because I've seen job listings and jobs and consulting work posted in groups like that as well. So I think that is a fantastic thing, back to what you were saying earlier, Crystal, that building that network and using those resources that a lot of us have at our fingertips or have locally in some way is a great way to start some of those relationships and those opportunities. I would love to ask, this is a bigger question, but in this rapidly changing tech landscape, how can professionals adapt and stay resilient in the face of constant innovation and disruption? We talked about those big layoffs. We see the changes that are coming with AI and different things like that. So what can professionals do to adapt and stay resilient and relevant?
Yeah. And there's somebody with my last name who's also in the chat who just answered it for us. Network. That is absolutely one of the key pieces. I had a former colleague posted on LinkedIn at the beginning of this year. She worked at the place in Boulder where I worked years ago. And she had moved on in, I think it was 2016. To another company in the broader Denver metropolitan area that focused on tech, and loved it and was there until this winter, and she was laid off. So it had been, let's see, almost 7 years since she had joined the company. And she called as the phrase would say, she called the cops on herself, the police on herself during that LinkedIn post, and said, I didn't network. I didn't maintain my network. And now I don't have a lot of options. So I'm back out here. And she said, I have a goal of meeting one person at every tech company in Denver this year. Now that's a lot, but I think the point is that she learned that your network is alive. You can't neglect it. It's kind of like the houseplants, right? If you go on vacation and you don't have a way for them to get watered and get sun, they are going to be shriveled up when you come back. Your network's the same way. You have to check in. It's not just about whether or not you need something. It's about whether or not other people in your network need something, because you are in a position to hold a door open for them, right? So networking is extremely important in layoff situations or in an industry that's ever changing. The other thing that's extremely important, and I mentioned this, is the growth mindset. And that means you're constantly learning in this modern world, if you're going to stay flexible. And by constantly learning, that means think about what's next. So it may not be comfortable, but it's coming. I didn't mention, but I'll say now, my observation is that layoffs in technology, when they come from the larger publicly funded technology firms, oftentimes are less about ups and downs in the market like it is in the financial industry. It's more about resizing and reskilling who's in your employee base. So things that were important for the last 5 years from a technical perspective may not be as important for the next 5 years. An example of that is easy to think of for Microsoft, since I think we've all used Microsoft products, is how many of you remember installing Windows with disk? And when it was time for a Windows update, you had this package that you bought of, I don't know, however many disks or a CD that you had to put into your laptop or your desktop and wait for it and click and, not shut your computer off. And it was like half an hour, or maybe it was 3 hours, whatever, right? That world's gone. All of those product managers, all of the people in the customer support or success teams, whoever was in logistics shipping out those physical discs, those jobs have gone away. Some of those jobs transitioned into what is now the online products that we get from Microsoft or from Google. But not all of them did. And there were definitely people that were laid off. Some companies have a policy where you're laid off that they invite you to reapply for something else for a 60-day time period, and you have your benefits during that time. That's because you have to reshuffle where everyone's focused, and it's really hard to make those changes when teams are intact. So as an individual who has chosen to be in the technology industry, in order to stay relevant and to, frankly, in my opinion, have fun, because I love to be on the frontier of tech, you have to constantly be thinking about what Chris Capicella used to refer to as skate where the puck's going, not where it is, in hockey analogy. So what's happening next? And that's where we go back to the brief advertisement that Marissa, you gave at the beginning of this session, which is Women in Cloud has phenomenal skilling resources where you can go and get new certifications for what's happening next. So what's happening in data, and how is that changing the business decisions that are being made in companies? There's a lot of courses available that focus on elements of data science. In addition to that, I personally am in the AI fundamentals course from Microsoft right now, because as a business leader and as somebody who's specialized in unstructured and structured data over the course of my entire career, I want to know how I'm going to be able to utilize that technology for either the organization I'm in or for the clients that my organization is serving. And so to get trained up on that and stay relevant on that is just part of my routine. It's part of my day. So figure out what that is for you and make a commitment to yourself and your planner. You're not just doing your work for 40 hours a week or 50 or whatever your work schedule is, but you also have intentionally had one networking conversation during the week, either a check-in with a former colleague for virtual coffee or somebody that you recently met through LinkedIn or an event like this. If you attend an event like this, make a goal for yourself that you reach out to at least one person and say, hey, I really liked your comment in that Women in Cloud presentation on resilience. Let's connect and, have virtual coffee. Make those goals for yourself every week. Those are part of your work. They're part of who you are as a professional. If you only focus on the thing that you're getting paid for, you could run into a wall and then find yourself searching like my former colleague did, going, oh my God, I need a job and I don't even know where to start. And, that's preventable, but it takes intention.
Thank you so much for that, Crystal. I think that was fantastic advice. And I was about to wrap up and ask you for some action steps for our audience, but you gave us some. You talked about making a point to, like you said, connect with one person, set up a virtual coffee meeting at least once a week, really put yourself out there. Because if anyone's like me, I'm in my mid 20s and talking to people can be scary. I know picking up the phone can be scary. The worst thing that's happened is someone says they're not available, or they might not have the resource that you need or the connection that you need, but you might have still made a new connection. Like worst case scenario, someone just says, oh, I can't this week. Thank you for reaching out. So it's definitely worth it. And like you said, network building is so important. So since we are coming to a close, I want to give you the stage one more time to just wrap up any closing thoughts. And everyone that's here with us today, we're talking about networking. Drop your LinkedIn in the chat, connect with people. I already see connections being made. So find ways to connect with people. Go ahead and drop your LinkedIn. And I shared the Women in Cloud Network as well. You can join us there. But I'll pass it back to you one last time, Crystal, and you can wrap up and give us any last minute things that you want to say and last minute advice. This has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marissa. So, to summarize, I'm really glad that you're here today. It shows that you're investing in yourself by taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and, listen, maybe hear something new, and also meet some new people that are focused on technology as well. When we think back to the underrepresentation of women in cloud, we've all got a lot of work on our plates, not only those of us that are women here in the call, but also our male allies that are here, to question the system, to question the concept of fit, to question how we interview and what we interview for, and how our recruiting teams that we utilize as managers even find candidates. It's really easy to put a square peg in a square hole. Toddlers can do that with their toys. But how can you figure out who's going to contribute to your team and lead an effort and have a divergent, creative way of thinking about it, but also have the skills that are necessary for success? It doesn't mean that you're going to grab whoever holds that title at some other company. It could mean that you grab somebody who connected the dots and told you a narrative to say, yeah, not only can I do this, but I've been doing it really well for a long time. Those are the people that we want to interview. Those are the people that we want to hire. Those are the people who oftentimes represent women who are running into corners and not getting promoted or are being laid off. We all have a responsibility to think about it differently. Joining groups like Women in Cloud can help us do that. I've been a member of Women in Cloud since 2020, when I went to an in-person event and was totally energized by it. It helped get me through the dark days of being on lockdown with COVID. And it's also just great to hear new perspectives and meet new people all the time. So I urge you to join Women in Cloud, participate in our conversations, get access to the skilling resources that Marissa will lead not only today, but also on the Women in Cloud page. Please follow on LinkedIn, and I look forward to connecting with y'all at some point in the future.
Thank you so much for that. Everyone, give a big thank you, a shout out to Crystal in the chat. She did absolutely amazing. And with that wraps up our session. I will leave the chat and leave the session open for another couple minutes so you all can grab each other's LinkedIns. I see a lot of those in there, but thank you so much, Crystal. And thank you, everyone. If anyone has any extra questions, especially about like the scholarship, like Crystal just mentioned, feel free to drop them because I'll stay on for a few more minutes, but we really appreciate it. This was amazing.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.